officially say that summer is over? I think so.
Now, because we back.
Oh, I guess that's fair, but sources, a.k.a. Google, say September 22nd is officially the end of summer, which means we are inching closer and closer to the NBA season. Training camp is only 19 days away. All 29 teams, though, will be chasing the reigning champion Boston Celtics, but we all know that that path is not going to be a cakewalk. So let's take a look at the odds to win the 2025 title. The Celtics are the favorites, but the Thunder actually have the next best odds to win it all in 2025, followed by the Sixers, the Nuggets, and the Knicks. All of those teams have better than 10-1 odds, but are still looking up at the Boston Celtics. And speaking of the Celtics, Coach Joe Mazzulla is not letting his team let their guard down one bit.
We're gonna have difficult moments of the season. Like, that's going to happen. You know, people are gonna say the target's on our back, but I hope it's right in our forehead in between our eyes. I hope I can see the red dot.
So uniquely himself. We have to start with worldwide Wendy, because Wendy, you spent some time with the Celtics this summer in Paris after they won Banner 18. What Joe Mazzulla said is obvious. The defending champs will have a target on their back or in between their eyes. But Brian, do you think that they still have a chip on their shoulder despite winning it all?
They're going to say that they do, Chiney, and that they're going to pretend like that's a big thing, and that's what they should do. But we know through history of the NBA and human nature, it's really hard to maintain that. I'll go back to something that Pat Riley once told me about his famous declaration. You remember 1987, he's at the parade in LA and he announces, we're gonna do it again. He pretty much guaranteed they'd come back and win it in 88. Well, there was a reason he was doing that, and it wasn't just to get a big cheer. He was telling me one time that it was because the previous two times the Lakers had won the title, he noticed that the team had completely lost its edge going into the next season, and he wanted to apply pressure to them to come back with that edge. It's just hard to maintain it. And by the way, we've had 7 consecutive years of not having a back-to-back champion. The last time we had a back-to-back champion was the Warriors, when they had arguably one of the greatest teams of all time in 17 and 18. So I expect the Celtics to give a great title defense, but it's not going to be the same once you won the championship.
Look, they won a title, and they haven't got off the duck boats before the owner says, I'm selling the team. And then Jalen Brown is not chosen as a replacement for the Olympic team, and Jason Tatum is benched in the first game. And, this is the summer of the Celtics' disrespect. Joe Mazzulla doesn't have to do anything to light a fire under these guys. That chip on their shoulder is already there. And I think if you're looking for motivation, if you're the Celtics coach or anyone in Boston, it's already there. Like, they won a title, and I know a lot of us were there in the confetti splash and getting his champagne on us, but they were talking about, we finally proved we can do it. We finally proved we're champions. And yet, everything after that was like they didn't prove anything. Everybody just Jason Tatum gave an interview the other day and said, sometimes you wonder if I'm a true superstar. And when you don't play in the Olympics and you're sitting on the bench and you're not one of those guys, Jalen Brown, his subtweets this summer, unbelievable. Right? And so I think in terms of, I think this is an ideal circumstance for Boston coming back after winning a title.
I had Joe Mazzulla on my podcast a few days after they won the championship, and I started to ask a question about repeating as champions and how were they going to lean into that. And I expected maybe a sort of soft deflection, and he interrupted my question and he said, it's all I've been thinking about since the final buzzer went off. And I love it. Say it out loud. Don't run from it. Try to break this streak of without a repeat champion in the NBA. I love it. They are going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think Tatum and Brown are legitimately irked at how their summers went. But look, they got through the playoffs last year without facing any of New York, Philadelphia, or Milwaukee, all of whom were dealing with major injuries anyway. And every team they did face on the way to the finals was also dealing with major injuries. It's not going to be like that again. The East is better. Their run is going to be tougher. But they are the best positioned champion since those all-time great Warriors to make a real run at a repeat. Even a little bit better, I think, than last year's Nuggets, who came closer than people maybe give them credit for.
I'm right there with you, Zach, because when I was trying to think about this, I was like, what is the glaring weakness for the Boston Celtics? There isn't one. They finished number 1 in offense, number 2 in defense. Health is probably the only question mark. But we all know that repeating as champions is very tough. And that is something that has not happened in the NBA in any of the last 7 seasons. We've gone 7 straight years with a new champion. That's something that hasn't been done in the NBA since the 1970s. So 7 champions in 7 seasons. I know Zach is on the record, as he mentioned, for believing that the Celtics do have the best chance at repeating since the Warriors, which you just said. Now, Zach, who do you, though, think is their biggest threat, though?
I think it's the top of the East, which is going to be completely different if they're healthy this year than it was last year. The Sixers won free agency by getting Paul George, rounded out their team with good contracts, and they're well positioned to make a trade in the middle of the season. Milwaukee is still here. Everyone's kind of moved off of them. I get why, but they still have Giannis. They still have the nucleus of a really good team there. And the Knicks made the biggest trade of the offseason. Cleveland is still around. Orlando's going to be better. Indiana's going to be better. It's not going to be like it was last year when they got Miami without Jimmy Butler, Cleveland without Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert, others in that series, Jared Allen, and then Indiana with Tyrese Halliburton missing a couple games in that series. It's not going to be like that again, and everyone is going to be gunning for them. Every game against Boston is going to be appointment television for every other team. But look, everybody's back. Once Porzingis gets healthy, we'll see how long that takes. They're just coming back fully loaded again.
Yeah, being honest, how many teams coming into any season do we honestly think can win the whole thing? Some years, we've been sitting here saying it's 3. I do think that list is longer this year. I mean, you just look at the West from last year. You had 3 teams essentially tie for the number 1 seed in Minnesota, Denver, and Oklahoma City. They were within 1 game of each other, and none of those 3 actually won the West. So there's no doubt that there is a longer list that Boston's going to have to overcome. But Zach mentioned Giannis a second ago. The last 2 playoff seasons have been devoid of Giannis Antetokounmpo because he got hurt. The Celtics beat Giannis in a 7-game series 3 years ago, but haven't had to face him. He is a beast in a playoff series. If he's back and healthy, that's a bigger mountain to climb, in addition to the Knicks and 76ers. So I do think they had a magical run last year. They earned it. They played great in the regular season. They played great in the playoffs. But if they are able to win it again, it will be a much tougher run in the playoffs. Just the law of averages dictates that.
So we all talked about, it was boring. They didn't have to go through anybody. You know why they didn't have to go through people? Because they were so far out in front of everybody else in the East. They lapped the field. They could rest guys at the end. They could be healthy. This year, Jason Tatum played all the way through the Olympics. Drew Holiday played all the way through the Olympics. They didn't get their typical rest during the summer. Porzingis is going to be coming off of surgery. We don't know when he comes back and when he's healthy. They're gonna have a hard time building up as much of a lead as they did as the last time when they lapped the field and they could rest guys at the end of the season.
I heard a number of teams, the Knicks, the Sixers, the Bucks. Yeah. We didn't really mention too much in the West. I think they've got a lot of young stars of the rising generation that want to take that spot like Luka did. To me, it's like a test, multiple choice, all of the above. Everyone's coming for the Celtics. The NBA offseason is still in vacation mode. I mean, so are we, kind of. So we're going coast-to-coast summer edition. Let's start with the Bucks, who had a disappointing year. But check out what Charles Barkley said to The Ringer. He said, quote, Giannis has to get better as a basketball player. Just going downhill 1-on-5 isn't going to work. It doesn't work, and he's a terrific player, and he's a terrific kid, but he has to get better as a basketball player. I'm not a Milwaukee guy. So, Ramona, Giannis needs to get better. How much better can he get?
Well, I think what Charles is talking about is the way he plays with Damian Lillard. It's not just that he needs to get better at shooting the 3. He only shot 27% at 3-pointers last year. He can improve his mid-range game, but it's about elevating himself and Damian Lillard to be that superstar duo that they traded for and wanted to build the team around.
Happy news from Knicks land. Jalen Brunson's wife, Allie, posted a photo of their new baby, Jordan, shown here throwing up the 3 symbol on Instagram, just like her daddy. Looks like Jordan might already have also a clothing deal there, too. So Jalen Brunson is coming off of a career season, top 5 in MVP voting. Zach, what will be the Knicks' biggest challenge this year?
I don't know if it's a challenge, but the biggest question is, what's Julius Randle's place on this team? He's in the final year of his contract, minus a player option a couple years down the line. He's eligible for an extension. It hasn't come. The team kind of took off without him when he was injured, but they missed his offense in the regular season. How does he adapt to a role where Jalen Brunson is now ascended to super duper ball dominant star? And Julius Randle's not a great three-point shooter. OG Anunoby was a great fit in that starting five. In an ideal world, which I don't think exists, Julius Randle could be an incredible six-man playing 28, 30 minutes a game and just taking over when Jalen Brunson rests. But you can't make a two-time All-NBA forward a six-man. So how that piece fits together, whether they actually try to trade him at some point, what they get back to, they just play it out. I think that's one of the most fascinating questions in the league.
Yeah, not to mention that extension is, they haven't signed it yet, and now you're talking about a lesser role. Like, that's hard to go and, let's say he doesn't sign this extension, they don't come to an agreement now. Jalen Brunson has already taken less on his extension, which puts pressure now on Julius Randle to do the same. And you're going to take a lesser role when you're trying to argue for more money? That's a very difficult proposition for them. Plus, they have to integrate Mikal Bridges. They have to make up for the loss of Isaiah Hartenstein. I still really like the Knicks here, but and they need Julius Randle to do exactly the kind of game that he has. They needed more offense in the playoffs, but it's a tough position for them to be in. It's going to be fascinating to watch all year.
Brian, do you think that the Knicks are currently happy with their current roster?
I think their roster is a little bit incomplete. They've obviously done a great job, but from an X and O standpoint, they are a little bit short at center. They lost Isaiah Hartenstein. They have to, rely on Mitchell Robinson, who has been terrific, but he's been a little injury prone. So let's keep an eye on what they do from a trade standpoint as the season goes along. There's already been some connection between them and Walker Kessler with the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are difficult to make a deal with. They have very high asks, but it's possible Walker Kessler could change teams, and he fits nicely about what the Knicks want to do. Also, I would say Robert Williams from Portland. I would say any team looking for a center is going to watch Robert Williams closely this year. After the Blazers drafted Donovan Clingan and they've got DeAndre Ayton, who's probably not very tradable on their roster, I don't know where Robert Williams fits, and I think the Knicks will be among the teams monitoring him. So as the season goes along, Zach is absolutely right. We'll see Julius Randle and his role in that contract be a topic, but on the court, how that center position goes is going to be a big topic from week to week as they try to get going.
Zach, do you have any concerns about that position, the center, the inside?
I do, only because of Mitchell Robinson's durability. I think he's a perfect fit for what Tibbs wants to do on defense. He's not as skilled as Hartenstein is on offense. Isaiah Hartenstein's a great passer, great floater. He's going to be awesome in Oklahoma City. I think Preston Chachua is underrated as a backup center. But look, these two issues can be connected, right? If Julius Randle, if the Knicks decide for whatever reason we need to move on from him, and one of the reasons Jalen Brunson taking that below market deal was so big for them is they can turn that Julius Randle salary slot into something real going forward, whether it's Julius Randle on a new deal or trading him maybe in a deal that brings them one of the centers that Brian mentioned. And I think Walker Kessler and Robert Williams III are good names, and I think there are others out there too. So again, we project how these teams are going to do based on how they are now, but the season is going to bring a lot of changes, a lot of trades. The Knicks are well set up regardless.
NBA,